just tell you the level of complexity of this with access lists and routing and everything else. It really is a complicated thing, and you try to pull this off like pulling out of equipment over a weekend or something, you're going to have a lot of problems. I mean, the best approach is to do it all at once if you can do it, and obviously we're very lucky as a school district having that period during the summer that it wouldn't impact as much if there were a problem. You know, my feeling is obviously there's always someone that needs to maintain it, but really someone has to review it, really look at it very closely, look at what was done before, make adjustments and everything else. And you know, I mean, $175 an hour, I would say that's about right. I mean, typically, you know, I get someone right around that when I bring someone in. And obviously the scope of the work is quite large here. You know, I would hope, you know, one of the things is if we go to more modular equipment, one of the things, I mean, not to say that's the right decision, but to look at the possibility of maybe not having maintenance on the switches, and if one goes bad, you have a spare and you part with it, because it may be cheaper just to have equipment as spares versus paying for maintenance. You know, I mean, there's things to look at, and that's Dennis's responsibility to do that. But you know, there's things that you can do, especially going the modular route versus a chassis. I think chassis, you know, live their day unless you're in a very difficult environment that you need that capability of failover and things like that. You know, this methodology is probably the right way to go here, and definitely will benefit it. And obviously, you know, we have equipment that's 10 years old. I mean, a lot's changed, and you know, the equipment's reliable now. So I think, you know, you can get a lot more use out of it than 5 years. So, you know, we probably should have a plan down the road to say, hey, this is going to be our change-out policy, and make sure we budget better for it, and maybe do it rolling versus, you know, do the big bang so it doesn't impact dollar amount and things like that. So, you know, these are things we should discuss.
We are, to take your suggestion, right. This will be a 3-year payout
right.
on this, and hopefully we'll keep it rolling right. as other equipment becomes obsolete going forward.
Right. Yeah, so we don't see, you know, I mean, people have a hard time getting their hands around a big expenditure like this, and, you know, it's definitely easier to do it in small bits at a time. So.
It's kind of a follow-up question to the gentleman's question. Do we currently have wireless in the schools?
We do currently. We have 2 base stations, one in the cafeteria and one in the media center for each one of the buildings, including one here, 2 here at the board office, one in this room here and one above us in the curriculum center.
Okay.
So that was the first criteria. Is one of the things I like to do is test the technology. Let's make sure it works in the buildings and it's used to its efficiency before we look to expand upon what we have. And that test, as I said, I really believe for every single school I've gotten just wonderful feedback from all of staff, and everyone said, please, just, you know, the only complaint I have is give me more. I need it in other areas.
Mm-hmm. So this expands kind of the wireless area that you can go into the building and not have to plug in and have access.
That's the idea, is that we would give coverage to every one of the classrooms in the district. We would actually look to cover at a 60%, so each base station would actually use 60% of its antenna usage, and the idea is if one were to go down because it's a managed environment, another base station would take over. And that's only, you know, that elaborate layout is only to make sure we ensure that coverage across the building at all times.
And so kind of to the business case, in your perspective is that that's a you know, real advantage to have the wireless throughout, and the users agree with that.
I think the real business case for the example here is the idea that we don't have to build additional labs. Rather than me coming in front of the board saying, okay, we have a deficiency of lab space, which we have in every building at this point, rather than looking at new buildings and new rooms to accommodate, even our current labs can accommodate some of the full class sizes. Let's look at a wireless technology where we can roll in multiple carts, and I think this is only the beginning phase of that to accomplish those goals. So I think from the business case of it, it really comes down to addressing the needs for computers in the classrooms.
Well, one thing I want to add to that's a very valid point here. With resources, availability, classrooms at our school, to have another classroom dedicated to computers really would tie up something we could be using for teachers versus rolling in a cart and letting the students all use notebooks right into the class. It's not as disruptive, not the time to walk there and everything else, and you do it as a class. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of benefit for facility use there over the long run. So I see that as a major plus there.
So we could maybe even teach some savings there, kind of long-term or mid-term savings potentially?
I don't know if we're really looking at targeting it from a savings perspective, because I don't want to say that we're going to change the current model and remove computers from the rooms. I'm not so sure that's the direction. But I will say that those discussions happen every day, and we do evaluate them on a day-to-day. So, today I might say no, but tomorrow it might be just the opposite, and we say, we can better address those needs in the classrooms that way.
Thanks.